I want to talk with you about Later by one of my favorite authors, Stephen King. This crime novel has been published in 2021 as a hard case crime novel. If you haven't heard of Hard Case Crime, it is an American imprint which is dedicated to collecting and publishing best crime novels, ranging from old school noir masterpieces to today's most powerful authors. This novel is a third Stephen King's hard crime case release, following The Colorado Kid and Joyland. So as per usual, we will start this video with a short synopsis and then proceed into a non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read the book yet, then do not worry, I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. Later is a story of Jamie Conklin, and the book is narrated by Jamie himself. He's retelling us his childhood events that shaped him as a person. So even though we get to hear from Jamie, who is currently in his early 20s, we actually follow Jamie as a child and a teen. Jamie's living with his mom, who is struggling between raising a child on her own, running a publishing company, the financial responsibilities that come by having a brother who is crippled by early Alzheimer's, and dealing with the aftermath of the Great Recession. Jamie's a boy who is blessed or cursed with supernatural abilities. He can see and hear what others can't. And the better Jamie understands the world around him, the quicker he learns just how dangerous his abilities actually are. Another prominent character in Later is Jamie's mom's Tia's girlfriend, Liz. She's an NYPD detective, and while at first she might feel a bit of a side character, soon enough we learn that her actions and her decisions are the things that end up costing Jamie the most. Now I know that Later is a crime novel. There's no arguing about that. It has been released as a crime novel, it has all the good old crime novel elements, and it was picked up by the Hard Case Crime. And yet Later is so much more than that. Later is a perfect example of how effortlessly Stephen King navigates between multiple genres. I picked up this book expecting to get a clear-cut crime story, but once I started reading it, I realized just how easily this book could be identified as a horror novel. It's a perfect blend of both. And in addition, the ending of the book led me to believe that the best part about this book wasn't even the great crime elements or the horror undertones, but the drama. The story of a boy who is confused, who is lost, and who have had to go through too much while still being so very young. Overall, Jamie is a wonderful narrator. He's smart, funny, perceptive, and has great dynamic with his mother. The story told by him flows naturally. When you read the book, you find it so easy to identify with the thoughts and feelings of Jamie as a child just because they feel so real. And while I assume that majority of us do not suffer from any supernatural conditions, we can still relate to a boy who is scared and confused or jealous, who wants to be a good son and keep his mother happy, protect her from the worries. Yet at the same time, he's drowning in adult problems without any actual adult supervision. As I've said before, I love Stephen King. I love his writing style, his world building, his incredible talent when it comes to introducing us to his characters, and the way he's describing even the most mundane things in the most incredibly detailed way possible. And Later, for me, felt like Stephen King at his best. Yes, it's not one of his masterpieces, but I would without a doubt recommend this book and to the fans of Stephen King and to the people who want to get their introduction to the world of Stephen King, yet are a little bit cautious about straight away grabbing a book that is 1,000 pages long, like It or The Stand. Later is a short enough novel, but I would argue that there's no need for it to be any longer than it is. Just in under 300 pages, Stephen King gave us a complete story that recounts the most important events that take place throughout multiple years of Jamie's life. This book wasn't too short, nor it was too long. It was just perfect. And the best thing about the story, as with most of Stephen King works, is the human characters. While Later is filled with supernatural, once again King drives home the point that the scariest thing in this world is not ghosts or demons, it's people. People who are cruel, who are selfish, and who are neglectful. And on this note, I think we can proceed to the spoiler review and talk a little bit more about the actual plot of Later. So if you haven't read the book yet, this is a great time for you to click off this video. When I picked up this book to read, I didn't even read the synopsis of it. I saw a new novel by Stephen King, so I bought it. No questions asked. Consequently, as I saw it to be a crime novel, I did not actually expected any supernatural events to be taking place in the story. So you better believe that when I was reading Jamie's and his mom's interaction with Martin Burkett, I was a bit shocked, yet as a horror fan, so pleasantly surprised when I realized that Mona, whom Jamie's talking to, is actually dead. The whole scene felt so organic and simple, and that was perfect. Stephen King described a small child seeing, hearing, and communicating with a dead woman in such a mundane way that just in one simple conversation, it became clear just how often Jamie has to deal with this. Talking with dead people, seeing dead people, is as natural of an occurrence for him as noticing a stray cat would be for us. To be honest, I really enjoy the way Stephen King touched upon what happens to people after they die. While he didn't went into any of the theories for the afterlife, I enjoyed the calmness and acceptance that was shown to us. All the ghosts in the novel seemed to be peaceful. They didn't care no more about the things they cared about in life. They didn't feel hurt or scared. They were not in pain, even if they died in a painful way. They were just there, restful, slowly dissipating from our world. Throughout the book, we are also shown how lonely it is for Jamie to not have anyone he can talk about his powers with. While Tia is an overall a loving mother, her fear for the unknown is bigger than her wish to help her son to become more comfortable with his powers. To an extent, she thinks about his ability to see dead people as a choice. As if Jamie will stop talking about it, stop looking for it, it will stop happening. Further on in the book, we can see that the only person who really understood what Jamie must have felt was Mr. Burkett. While he also might have not believed Jamie at first, at least he believed that Jamie believes in it and that he is unable to control it. Which is probably the reason why I respect Mr. Burkett the most among the grown-up characters presented in this book. As I have touched upon it in the non-spoiler review, like in most of Stephen King books, in this one as well, the biggest evil presented to us is people. While the supernatural entities might be evil by nature, people more often than not tend to be evil by choice. Tia can be a neglectful mother. While her concern for the financial instability caused by the Great Recession is understandable, and even the decision of dragging Jamie to the house of Reggie Thomas and forcing her son to use his powers, as she believes that's the only way for them to stay afloat, is also understandable. Her drinking, smoking, and the overall neglectful attitude is more difficult to justify. Now, I'm not saying that Tia is a bad mother. She's just human. And Stephen King never fails to show us that humans are flawed. Then we have Liz, who can be arguably described as the biggest baddie of the book, at least in the eyes of Jamie. She's selfish, she's a bad influence on Tia, she's a dirty cop, she's a drug addict, a killer, and a thief. She uses a teenage boy to achieve her goals, knowing that she's putting him in danger, understanding very well the emotional and psychological distress she's putting him through, even going as far as being willing to kill Jamie just to achieve what she set out to achieve. She just doesn't care about anyone else but herself. Basically, every time she could have made a choice, she made a bad one. Lastly, we have the Thumper. And I feel like with this character, the author showed oh so very well to us, the readers, that it is humans that we should feel most afraid of. Yes, Thumper as a demonic entity was terrifying, but I would argue that Thumper as a human being was even more evil. That's at least the conclusion I arrived to after reading this story. Thumper as a demonic entity is inherently evil. And yet that entity that is supposed to be pure evil is afraid of a child, is overpowered by a child, and it ends up being controlled by a child. Now Thumper as a human makes a conscious decision to hurt people, to kill them. Even when he knows that everything is over, he cowardly kills himself instead of facing the consequences for his actions, and makes sure to try and kill as many people as possible on his way out from this world. If you ask me, it's pretty messed up when a demonic entity is better at accepting defeat than his human counterpart. Anyhow, weirdly enough, but in the book where we get a child who can see and talk to dead people, who is being abducted multiple times by his mother's ex-girlfriend, who is being stalked and psychologically tortured by a demon of a dead serial killer. The worst thing, the biggest shock for me, was learning that Tia's brother Harry is actually Jamie's father. My rational mind for a moment even tried to explain this by thinking that maybe, just maybe, Harry's not actually Tia's brother at all. Maybe Jamie's not born out of incestuous conception. Maybe I missed some small detail in the story that would reveal to us that Harry is actually Tia's old lover and she's taking care of him out of the obligation she feels towards her son. But no, I just had to accept it. I had to accept that Harry is in fact Jamie's uncle and his father. I actually very much appreciated that Stephen King decided not to provide us any actual details on how the conception of Jamie happened. It's a weird feeling when you hope that the sex resulting in a child between a brother and sister was actually consensual. So yeah, I appreciate King leaving the possibility for that open. Otherwise, I would just have to accept the tragedy of Tia being raped by her own brother, and then not only having to raise a child that would be a constant reminder of what happened, but also to be responsible for keeping said brother well and alive and making sure he's taken care of. That just seems too cruel to be true. But then again, it's Stephen King we are talking about, and when it comes to Stephen King, nothing is really off limits. Anyhow, that's just my opinion. What about yours?